like?
Rob sounds like the members of the woke left who keep trying to tell me that nobody in America cared about biological men in women's sport.
Oh, so now I'm a leftist.
Trust me.
Okay.
Trust me.
Wait a second. This is why.
Trust me.
From the moment Donald Trump was sworn in, everything he's said and done has been to praise and stroke Putin and to hit Zelensky over the head.
Donald Trump is doing stuff which is angering his own hardcore MAGA base.
Or it's more sinister than that, and they're covering up for Trump.
They do not want to talk about, nor do they care about the Epstein files. That's the first point that I want to make.
With all due respect, I think Rob Smith is misreading the MAGA base. I think President Trump, with all due respect, is misreading the MAGA base on this too.
But again, the MAGA base that voted him back in such big numbers, they did not vote for big-time help of Ukraine, did they?
I'm going to deliver Bill Clinton's head on a platter. Trump was saying the same damn thing.
The DOJ under Trump is getting win after win after win. So
Okay, Elmo, you say your account was hacked. I have to take your word for that. If that is what happened here, do you condemn these posts?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, just for transparency purposes, I'm going to let you know right off the top, the Elmo interview does not exist anywhere. I was fooled by Piers Morgan, so I will let you guys know that he does not actually interview Elmo. I'm not sure why that was on there, but I figured I'd include it because it was kind of if you will, so I said screw it. Might as well throw it in there, but it's a pretty good conversation, y'all. We're going to get into Epstein. We're going to get into Ukraine and Russia and all that good stuff. So y'all buckle up for that. Smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and all over the place with everybody you know all at the same time just because. And if you would, I would appreciate it if you would click that join button. Sign up and become a member. Help this channel expand and grow and prosper, y'all. But without any further ado, here we go.
Joe Walsh. There's a lot going on. There's been a lot going on since the day Donald Trump won the election. But there's a lot swirling around. And unusually, Donald Trump is doing stuff which is angering his own hardcore MAGA base. You could point to the strike on Iran. I thought we weren't going to interfere in foreign wars anymore. He did. Now we're seeing that he may be lining up to inject a lot of money and support in favor of Ukraine against Russia. Again, a lot of the MAGA crowd don't like that. And then you have the Epstein scandal, where the MAGA crowd were led to believe the moment the Trump administration got their hands on all the files, everything would be revealed and true accountability would follow. That isn't happening. So Trump's got an interesting issue here of how to retain his base. He's been very loyal to him, at the same time as making big decisions which are enraging them. What do you make of this?
Good to be with you, Pierce. Look, I've never thought that Trump's followers follow him based on any sort of issues. He's a symbol for them. He's a clenched fist for them. He's always been perceived of as an outsider who's going to reveal the deep state. Pierce, that's why I think this Epstein story is going to damage him big time. It's not just Bondi and Bongino and Patel who are out there for a few years lying, right, to their audiences about, oh my God, the Epstein thing, the files, the list. I'm going to deliver Bill Clinton's head on a platter. Trump was saying the same damn thing. So when you look at this Epstein list, they promised their MAGA base that this was going to be the mother of all deep state, going after the elite pedophile kind of a scandal like we've never seen. And now Bondi, Patel, Bongino, and Trump are all saying nothing there. Let's look away. Let's move on. They can't do that. So either, Pierce, they were all lying to their base and then they assume roles in government and they learn the truth, or it's more sinister than that and they're covering up for Trump. Why would Donald Trump want to move on from the Epstein files? Makes no sense.
Well, the thing, Rob Smith, which complicates it is, of course, the Elon Musk fallout with Donald Trump a few weeks ago. And Elon, in the middle of the night, unleashing what he called the biggest bombshell of his falling out with Trump, which is that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And since then, all the apparent enthusiasm by the Trump administration, a lot of Alina Hab came on here and was, telling me about how big it was going to be and how many people were involved and so on and so on. None of that has materialized. But people are putting 2 and 2 together here, and maybe they're getting 5, but they're saying Elon Musk says that, and then the whole thing gets shut down. And the problem with that is it lends itself, obviously, to furious speculation.
All right, Piers, let me make, thanks for having me. Let me make a couple of points here. First, my first point is this. The concern over the Jeffrey Epstein case and the Epstein files and all of this stuff doesn't really seem to be a concern of the everyday American that voted for Donald Trump. It seems to be an exclusive concern of the types of people, myself included as one of my side jobs, that speaks on camera or podcasts or spends time on social media every single day. In addition to being a podcaster and a content creator, I'm also a fellow with the Rainey Center for Public Policy. And as such, I talk with local and state legislators all across the country. They want to talk about deporting illegal immigrants. They want to talk about making sure that America can compete with China in the race for energy independence. They do not want to talk about, nor do they care about the Epstein files. That's the first point that I want to make, is that nobody really cares about this that doesn't do things like this for a living. The second point that I will make about this entire topic is that, yes, the Alina Habas of the world and a lot of people on Team Trump made a fundamental miscalculation when, after being elected and after being put in their positions, they still went on podcasts and they went on cable news and they kind of like drummed up and ginned up this expectation that there was going to be some big reveal. That was a fundamental miscalculation on their parts. And I think that a lot of people who are either never Trump conservatives or people that are pushing liberal propaganda would like to make it seem that this is some huge schism or huge shift in the MAGA base, of which I don't think it is. I think that the one thing that the MAGA base truly cares about is illegal immigration, and the Trump administration is doing their job when it comes to that. So, Piers, probably a lot of people on this panel are going to disagree with me, but I just simply do not think that the average American terminally online when it comes to that. So, Piers, probably a lot of people on this panel are going to disagree with me, but I just simply do not think that the average American who is not terminally online cares at all about the Epstein files. Did they make a miscalculation spending too much time on social media themselves and ginning up this expectation? Yes, but the average American just doesn't care.
I really don't know who the hell Rob Smith is talking to where he's getting this idea that nobody cares about the Epstein files, right? A lot of people, they might be apathetic to it, but like he said, these are people that are out of touch with politics, right? It's not just influencers, people like me, people online, people covering politics. It's people that are actually paying attention to politics that actually care about this, right? Like, there's a big spectrum of opinions on this, from everywhere from, Epstein was behind everything, Mossad and all of that garbage to, yeah, we're never going to get anything at all from any of this, right? But people care about this. People care about the transparency. We want accountability. We want justice for the victims. We want to know who was involved, because if, figures like Bill Gates were heavily involved, we want to know about this. We want to know that the head of Microsoft was conducting untoward activities. We'll say it like that. We want to know these things, right? But to say that, most Americans don't care about this, but he did say terminally online. Now, that's a key word right there, because who isn't terminally online? There's not a lot of people, to be honest with you. You got your older boomers, they might not be, but most everybody else, it stays online. They stay active on X, whatever it may be, whatever social media platform we're talking about, right? People are online constantly. So, that is a very, very big segment of the American population. That's all I'm going to say about that. But Joe Walsh over here is a lunatic. Like, this guy claims to be a Republican, but look at him. He's got a No Kings tag sitting right behind him. No Kings. Like, really, dude? That's like a far left ideologically driven movement that has the presupposition that Donald Trump is a king. Like, it's all nonsensical lunacy, if you ask me. This guy's just insane. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. It is kind of inexplicable, the, turnabout face on this thing, but come to think of it, when was Trump ever actually getting out there saying, yep, we're going to release the Epstein files and you're going to get transparency and blah, 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 blah. When was he ever actually talking about this? Or did we just think that he was talking about this? Or was it people like Kash Patel, Dan Bongino? Were they the ones that were actually talking about this? Was it actually Trump? Like, I don't really recall Trump ever campaigning on releasing the Epstein files. It may have been mentioned fleetingly a couple of times, but it never was like a campaign promise from what I can remember. If you guys happen to have some clips or some evidence to refute that, send them my way. I'd love to see them. But other than that, I'm not sure if Trump actually campaigned heavily on this. I think it was just people around him, like Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, these folks, people online, blah, 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 blah. But let's keep going.
Okay, I think you'll find Liz Wheeler cares. Liz Wheeler.
With all due respect, I think Rob Smith is misreading the MAGA base. I think President Trump, with all due respect, is misreading the MAGA base on this too, for an interesting reason, right? Let's go back to that day in February at the White House. I was there. I was one of the new media figures that were invited to the White House. I was given one of those infamous, infernal white Epstein files binders that day. And we weren't actually invited, by the way, to be given those files. We weren't invited to be given anything on Epstein or even to meet with Pam Bondi. We were there for a cool initiative by the White House to, ostracize the mainstream media and instead say, hey, we're not going to reward bad behavior and propagandists. We're going to give you access to the upper echelons of the Trump administration. That's why we were there, to meet with all kinds of officials in the Trump White House. But during our maybe 15-minute meeting with Pam Bondi, she brings in these banker boxes full of these Epstein files and hands them to us. And as soon as we saw them, we were like, whoa, Epstein files, phase one. What are we getting our hands on? She clarified very quickly and said, no, this is, there's nothing juicy or dirty in here. This is what was given to me by the FBI when I requested these files, as I promised you I would. But a whistleblower called me last night and said, actually, the SDNY is hiding truckloads of these documents, trying to subvert the president, the attorney general, and you. So the real story is that there are still deep state swamp creatures in the federal government trying to subvert the president's agenda. That was the story. Now, here's the strange part of this story, and it started the red flag started right from that moment, is on the front of that binder, that cover sheet that said the most transparent administration in history. Attorney General Pam Bondi told us at the White House that day that she created that cover sheet, that she printed it, she created it, and she was very proud of it. The most transparent administration in history. She was bragging about this, which was the first red flag to me, because I thought, well, what's in this? There's nothing in this. And I asked her at the time, I said, have you seen the documents that the SDNY is hiding from you? The real dirt, she told us. And she said, no. So you fast forward a little bit, at the time, she's the Attorney General of the United States. It's a friendly White House because I'm a supporter of President Trump. You give the Attorney General the benefit of the doubt. You hope she produces. Obviously, we can talk about the botched embargo that led to the media frenzy that day. But you can't square what Pam Bondi said in that room to me, bragging about the cover sheet of that binder. You can't square that with her appearances on Fox News, where she says, it's on my desk. The client list, the Epstein client list, where she promises the real stuff, videos and photos and recordings, that's going to be delivered to you. You can't square that then with its unsigned memo that probably she leaked to Axios saying, actually, there's no client list, there's no blackmail, he definitively killed himself, you're not getting any more information. So Piers, suddenly we're left in this situation. And the reason this narrative is so important is because it demonstrates why the base cares about this, why it's not just an online issue. Listen, I was never one of those podcasters that dug deeply into all of the details and nuances of the Epstein case itself. I was never one that was filing FOIA requests for government information about it. But all of a sudden, to the base, because of Attorney General Pam Bondi's lies, all of a sudden to the base, the Epstein files start to represent the justice that we voted for. You have to understand that during the Joe Biden administration, we were hurt. We were hurt by the deep state. We were told you have to stay in your homes. You're locked down because of COVID. You're going to be forced to get a vaccine. We were thrown in jail over January 6th. We were We were castigated as Russian agents because of Russiagate. You know, we were hurt by the lawfare against President Trump by censorship. Pro-lifers were jailed. Undercover journalists, some of whom work for my show right now, were targeted by the FBI. Parents were called domestic terrorists. Catholics were called violent extremists. We were hurt by this deep state. And we voted for President Trump because he promised justice. Justice does not mean memory holding these things and moving forward. It means identifying the people who committed the wrongdoing, indicting them, arresting them, and putting them on trial. And when you have that mentality, if that's the reason why you voted for President Trump, and suddenly the Epstein files, you are not just smelling a rat with his operation and his connections and his money and his death, not just the facts of the case itself, but the lack of transparency and the outright lies that you can identify being told by, not by Trump, by Attorney General Pam Bondi, then suddenly this starts to be associated with the justice that you voted for, and you worry that you're not going to get that very justice.
Okay.
That's why the base cares.
Well, I think that's a really interesting assessment of what I think is the correct way that many MAGA voters are looking at this. Let me bring in Josh Hammer. I mean, there are two arguments about this. One is I do think Liz Wheeler hit the nail on the head. This is what the MAGA base, a lot of them are feeling, is that actually the Trump administration on this issue is behaving exactly like the deep state it professes to want to get rid of. And that is damaging just politically, I think, never mind anything else. But there's also the issue that maybe, is it all disproportionate? That actually, are there much more important things going on? As we're talking, President Trump has come out and said, look, if Russia doesn't do a deal now with Ukraine in the next 60 days, then all hell's going to break loose with massive tariffs, 50 days, I think. Let me read the exact quote. We're very, very unhappy with them, Russia. We've been doing severe tariffs. We don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100% and billions of dollars more in weapons for Ukraine if no deal is done. And he's already authorized the use of the Patriot missiles. There's a lot going on here. Israel, there may be a ceasefire in Gaza and so on and so on. Are people putting a disproportionate amount of attention on the Epstein files, or is it, in terms of the politics here, actually really significant because it may hemorrhage Trump's core support?
Personally, I think this thing is being blown way out of proportion. Like, people are pretending this is the apocalypse, that, MAGA is split. You got these people over here saying we're going to trust our friends in government. Then you've got this side over here saying we want transparency. I don't think it's apocalyptic, right? Like, people just want the transparency. We want accountability for this. Nobody is going to deny Donald Trump is the best president we've seen in our entire lifetimes. I don't believe that at all. Anybody telling you otherwise, they're just grifting. If you ask me, they're just trying to get clicks for a specific reason, to make money, right? That's all that is. People, they're not going to say, because of this one thing, we're not going to support Trump anymore. That's just utter ridiculous. Trump is getting so many wins all the way across the board that everybody should be completely satisfied, as a matter of fact, with what Trump is doing right now. He's turned everything up to 11, right? We're getting the tariffs. We're getting the mass deportation operation, despite all the pushback from the courts, all the pushback from the left, the protests, everything. Donald Trump is still pushing forward with everything. He's already sown peace between Pakistan and India. People try to memory hole that one and forget about that one right quick. He's already been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize due to just that, right? But it was quickly shrouded and thrown away because of the strikes in Iran. I mean, it is what it is. Donald Trump is just doing so many things, just hitting us over and over and over and over and over again. We're getting so many wins all the way across the board, and most of it, a lot of it's culture war stuff. But it's not just the culture war stuff, right? Like the transgender issues. We're getting win after win after win on that. And it kind of sucks that most of these issues, it takes getting to the Supreme Court to get them over the line, but they're getting over the line. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump's election executive order. My very next video, I'm covering an article talking about that. The courts are relenting on that issue as well. So once again, folks, we're getting win after win after win. Anybody that is telling you, I'm not going to support Donald Trump anymore because of the Epstein files, is just trying to separate you from money and gain clicks and notoriety. It's just nonsense. It really, really is. And just don't buy into any of it. This is not as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. Sure, we would love to get some transparency on this, but as it has been for the past, 6 years, we understand that there are certain issues you can't release to the public. We're probably not going to get anything on this. We think we've got an angle, and we think we're so close to transparency that people are pushing really, really hard to try to get it over the line. But if it doesn't get over the line, I don't think anybody is going to be like, oh, well, screw Donald Trump. Like, you would be literally out of your mind to do that, considering every single other issue that you voted for, we're getting wins on. Except for one. Let's get into that.
I think there are other things going on which the MAGA base is also likely to be pretty upset about. And one of them is Trump now going all in against Vladimir Putin and helping Ukraine. Now, I happen to agree with this, right? I think it's long overdue that Trump flexed his muscles with Putin. And I think Putin's been mocking Trump and mocking America by talking to Trump and then unleashing his biggest bombardment within hours of doing it. This is deliberate taunting of the President of the United States. So it's long overdue. But again, the MAGA base that voted him back in such big numbers, they did not vote for big-time help of Ukraine, did they? This was going to get sorted in 24 hours, and they didn't want to have any more intervention in foreign wars and so on. So again, if I'm a MAGA guy, and I'm already incensed about the Epstein thing, and now I'm hearing that Donald Trump, who has closed down the Epstein files, now wants to go all in behind Zelensky, who many people on the MAGA side think is, a reprehensible character. I don't get it, why they think that, because I've met him. I respect him hugely. I think he's been invaded by a marauding Russian dictator. And in the good old days, the conservative right in America would be united in wanting to repel the Russian invader. Those days don't exist anymore. But my point is, it's not just going to be about Epstein. I think that Trump's going to find that a lot of the MAGA base really don't like him now going full in behind Ukraine. What do you think of that?
So I have lots of thoughts on Ukraine. I've had lots of thoughts on Ukraine for a long time. Just a very brief word, if I may, on Epstein and DOJ to kind of put a bow on that conversation. Then I'm happy to weigh in on Ukraine. Look, I hear you, Piers, and I hear Rob. I agree this is not a solely online phenomenon. My contention is that there are other issues I think the median Trump Vance voter cares more about. But I think there's also a bit of a missing of forest for the trees type thing going on here, even within the confines of the Trump DOJ. Piers, I'm also a lawyer. I clerked on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. I speak at law schools all across the country. This is the most conservative Department of Justice in my entire lifetime. Has Pam Bondi and the DOJ handled all of this to a T? Have they crossed all the T's, dotted the I's? No, of course not. I am not here to be Pam Bondi's apologist or anything like that there. But when you look at what the DOJ is doing when it comes to prosecuting this, prosecuting that, assisting Tom Homan to execute the avowed largest mass deportation operation in American history, all the things that Solicitor General Sauer is doing at the U.S. Supreme Court when it comes to ending chemical castration for minors in the state of Tennessee, and on and on. The DOJ under Trump is getting win after win after win. So that is one of many reasons why I come back to the point that if Donald Trump is really going to dig in his heels on this and stick with Pam Bondi, as I have every reason in the world to expect based on all my sources that he is 100% going to do that within the next 2 to 3 weeks at the most, people will have forgotten that this ever happened. So that's kind of my bow on that conversation. Now, turning a little bit to Ukraine and Russia. Look, I am someone who has indeed been skeptical of aggressive U.S. involvement in Ukraine for a very long time. I've written countless articles on this. I've spoken about this at great length. I view the exact contours of the eastern boundary between Ukraine and Russia to be something that is not necessarily directly in the American national interest. Of course, if Vladimir Putin starts marching into Warsaw, Poland triggers Article 5 of NATO, very, very different conversation there. Now, I did vote for Donald Trump, among other things, for foreign policy because he shares my nationalist, realist, sober foreign policy that is neither neoconservative nor isolationist. I think that Donald Trump, with good faith, has really actually tried to get a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. He has tried to apply pressure on both Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. probably a little bit too much pressure actually at times on one and then the other there. But he really has actually tried, from all I can tell, in genuine good faith to do that. As it turns out, Piers, Vladimir Putin is simply not playing ball. In fact, if you look at the missiles and the drones, the death tolls over Kiev over the past month or so, these are some of the largest volleys of the past 3.5 years of the war. So what is he supposed to do other than to threaten tariffs and sanctions? He's actually approached this in a very empirical, ad hoc, step-by-step way, not necessarily in hoc to ideological blinders as so many in the foreign policy establishment have. So even I, as someone who is skeptical of advanced involvement for the U.S. in the Russia-Ukraine theater, I think he's actually handled it quite well. I'm still cautiously optimistic that we can find our way to a ceasefire here sooner rather than later.
Okay, so Russia-Ukraine. Now, if any area where Donald Trump is going to get a lot of pushback and a lot of possible separation of his base, this is going to be that area. Many, many Americans are sick and tired of all these foreign wars, all this regime change nonsense. We're getting tired of funding all this crap, and we just don't want it anymore. I think Donald Trump knows that. But look, there's a much bigger picture here, especially from me. Right? Like, you will get significant pushback from me if Donald Trump starts funding Ukraine like Joe Biden was funding Ukraine. Look, I don't like that whatsoever. I don't like the fact that we're funding Israel, Gaza, and all that nonsense. Of course, it's not nearly to the extent that it was under Joe Biden. I don't like it whatsoever. I don't think we need to be involved with these wars. Or people are like, well, you just let a dictator run over Europe? Yeah, sure. Why the hell not? Who are we to intervene in all of these issues? Who gives us the moral indignation to go in and stop Vladimir Putin from invading somewhere that's not one of our allies? Ukraine is not an ally. They're definitely not an ally. They are closer to an enemy than anything. They tried to interfere in the 2016 election on behalf of Hillary Clinton. You can go look that up. Washington Post. As a matter of fact, Germany has arrest warrants for, I think it's either 2 or 4 Ukrainians for sabotaging and destroying the Nord Stream pipeline. Yeah, it was Ukraine, apparently. After the investigation, they want to look into this. Apparently, it was Ukraine that went in and sabotaged that pipeline and destroyed it. Now, we don't know that for sure. We haven't been to court yet, obviously, because they can't get in touch with the people. But it's another tick in the box as to the reason why Ukraine is not our friend. So I do not know why we need to fund their war. I understand, once again, Putin invaded. But look, he's not going to go into Poland. I don't understand this idea of these people think that that's the only thing on Putin's mind is conquest of all of Europe. Oh, he's trying to reunite the old Soviet Union. Like, people take his words out of context. They harken back to a speech he made where, yes, that would be nice. That's basically what he said. It would be nice if we could reunify the old Soviet Union. But that does not mean he has territorial ambitions to do so. Those are very different things. So these people are conflating all of this nonsense, and then they're trying to convince everybody that Putin is just a conquistador. As a matter of fact, he just want to go in and conquer everything in Europe. Like, that is not going to happen, anybody. Like, come on, Article 5, did anybody forget about that? I mean, Putin might be a dictatorial scumbag, but he understands mutual assured destruction means. He knows damn good and well what that would mean. That would mean the destruction of Moscow, the destruction of Russia. He's not going to go there. Y'all think he's crazy? That crazy? No, I don't think so. Otherwise, he would have shown some inkling of wanting to invade all these other nations. He can't even completely invade Ukraine, for goodness sakes. He spent 3 years to go nowhere. All you got to do is look at the control lines. They haven't changed much since the beginning of that war. They're almost set in stone at this point. Now, I don't understand what's going on in Putin's mind. I'm going to speculate here a little bit as to why he's not coming to the negotiating table. Maybe it's Zelensky. I have no idea what is the blood clot here. But maybe Putin is thinking, he's in too deep to play ball at this point. Maybe he's gone too far and he can't just back out now. Otherwise, he looks weak. And I think that's all it is. It's more optics than anything else. Pride, if you will, that's keeping him from coming to the negotiating table and actually working something out with Donald Trump. And I think Zelensky plays a part in that as well, because Zelensky is hell-bent on getting back all of that territory, getting back Crimea, getting back everything, getting reparations from Russia, for goodness sakes. Like, sure, I mean, that would be nice if Putin just gave all that up. But do we really believe he's going to give all that up? No, he's not. As a matter of fact, that'll never happen, folks. The control lines where they are now, that'll probably be that way for a very, very long time. Let's keep going.
Hey, Joe, on Ukraine, I know you've been very critical that Trump hasn't acted earlier. I've talked to him quite a few times this year, and I got a real sense of his utter determination to stop the senseless killing as he saw it. The numbers are just, terrifying of soldiers on both sides getting killed on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So I've got no doubt he's determined to bring this to an end. I think he felt he could do a deal earlier with Putin than has turned out to be possible. I think he gave Ukraine quite a hard time. We all saw that. It was a bit unedifying in parts with the Oval Office bust up and so on, but it was certainly effective in getting Ukraine to crystallize their relationship with the United States to a way that Trump was happy. And I think Ukraine were okay with where they got to with the mineral deal and everything else. The problem, as Josh just said, is that Putin is not playing ball. In fact, what he's doing is raining more and more bombs down on Ukraine. And I feel the moment has come where the doubting MAGA right on this have got to understand what they're dealing with Putin. He is a ruthless Russian dictator who's a former KGB agent who took Crimea, invaded Georgia, now invaded Ukraine. He's not going to stop until actually the bigger person in the room stands up and stops him. That is America. So what do you feel about where we are now with Ukraine?
I worry that this isn't permanent. Look, Piers, from the beginning, Trump's inclination has been, and this is where he was before he won in November, to always take Putin's side and to always go after Ukraine. From the moment Donald Trump was sworn in, everything he's said and done has been to praise and stroke Putin and to hit Zelensky over the head. That's gotten us nowhere because, as you say, Piers, the bad guy in this, the bully, the tyrant, the dictator, the evil one is Putin. Now, does Trump now, after 6 months, finally realize that? I don't know. I think people around him realize that. But I worry, Piers, this isn't permanent. He was asked today, what did Trump do today? He threatened the secondary tariffs in 50 days. That's the second time he's made that threat to Putin. I don't know if it's real. And he was asked today, what are you going to do if Putin accelerates his attacks and does more? And he said, oh, it's Biden's war. Don't ask me a question like that. So he still is loath to say anything bad about Putin. But Pierce, last thing to your point, his base isn't going to understand this. And that's why I go back to the Epstein issue, because the Epstein issue is a breach of trust with his base. That's going to make him selling what he's doing in Ukraine even more difficult.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Rob, let me bring you in here. I do think that's a good point. And that's why I think you're slightly, I say this respectfully, but I think you're downplaying, I think, the scale of what is happening here by saying it's only an online thing, because it's not. And I think that Trump's going to face a real uprising of pretty high profile people who are going to use these three things, actually. They'll probably use Iran, the strike there. They're probably going to use the Ukraine support. They're going to use the Epstein files. They're going to put it all together and say, this ain't what we voted for. And that's where the problem's going to come.
Well, Piers, let me respond as a newly minted member of the woke left. I'm kidding. So you conflated a couple of things that you conflated a couple of points that I was making. I will die on the hill that nobody cares about Epstein. What the base and what my people like myself do care about is they do care about the handling of Iran, and they do very much care about sending more money and more weapons to the Ukraine, because there are people that are still, like myself, incredulous that this war is still happening. All right, and so that.
How would you stop Putin?
Not only the
out of interest,
base,
Rob, how would you stop Vladimir Putin?
What's that? I don't know. I'm not in the
Well, you've got to
administration.
have an answer.
And what I'm saying is
if you
this.
don't like the current strategy,
And
you've got to have a better.
What I will say is this.
You can't just let him do it, can you?
And I'm not speaking. What's that now?
Well, you can't just let Vladimir
lost
Putin
my
maraud
idea.
around invading sovereign democratic European countries, or can
No,
you?
you absolutely can, and I'm not. You absolutely can, and I'm not saying that, and I'm also not saying to stop funding the war and to stop arming Ukraine. I'm not saying these things at all. What I will say, and what I will agree with the majority of the panel about, is that this is something that the base cares about. So now, the Trump administration, I think that the one thing, and one of the many things that I can really ding them for, but I think that they have a really hard time effectively communicating their messaging on things that are important, like the Russia-Ukraine situation, right? I think that they have problems with communications. I think that they have problems managing influencers and all of that stuff. And so now what I will say to this is that they need to find out a way how to effectively communicate to not only the MAGA base, but to the American people that voted for Donald Trump, that, by the way, are not all MAGA base, why they are doing this, why they need to continue to do this, and what is the reasoning behind this. Because I will tell you that, yes, there are a lot of people that obviously do not want Russia to just be given free rein to do what they want to in this war, but there are people that have some very solid concerns and points, and I'm one of them myself, that is saying, we did not elect you to continue writing blank checks to the Ukraine. So, Piers, I absolutely understand where you're coming from on this. Hell, I even understand where Joe is coming from on this. And so I think that it's up to the Trump administration and everybody that is in charge here to figure out more of a way to more effectively communicate their messaging about this. I think they depend way too heavily on MAGA influencers and the MAGA base, and I think that they need to tighten up the communication, and they have to actually have some of their employed, staffed people whose job it is to be communicating these things to the American people. They need to get them out there effectively communicating this, because I think that they're losing in the comms game right now, because it's all about communications. And I don't think they're doing a great job.
Okay.
How do you go from being a rational human being, being a Republican in Congress, to identifying with the far left and becoming a Democrat? Like, what is wrong with Joe Walsh? Like, he's become so deranged with Donald Trump. He's fallen into the camp of some of these people that believe that Donald Trump needs to be speaking badly every single second of every single day only about Vladimir Putin. Otherwise, he's a Putin puppet. I just don't get how these people expect to conduct good faith negotiations to settle a war if one of the individuals that's mediating between the two is on the side of one of these people and constantly excoriating the other guy. How do you expect good faith negotiations to go down, my dude? Like, seriously, these people are so deranged with Donald Trump that they can't see the forest for the trees. They're like, oh, he's got to be talking crap about Putin constantly, because in their eyes, you know, Putin is the evil scumbag in the world. He's the only evil dictator out there. Like, why do these people not care about what's going on, I don't know, in Africa, or what's going on in China, for crying out loud? Like, they just focus in on Vladimir Putin as if Putin's the only evil scumbag in the world. I just don't get this idea. Look, I agree with most of what Rob said right there. Look, people don't want this war. I just got through explaining all that, so I'm not going to dig into that. I'm just wanting to dig into this deranged idea that Donald Trump has to be, you know, just excoriating Vladimir Putin all day long. Otherwise, if he's not, he's just a Putin puppet, and we shouldn't trust him. He's just going to vote in the interest of Putin instead of in the American. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. And I can't understand how these people can make those arguments. I just don't get it. Like, do these people just not see reality? I guess so, because most Democrats, they're allergic to reality. And the corporate press is the vaccine for reality, because they feed them this nonstop soup of just nonsense. Yeah, it's a nonsensical soup. It's what it is. Let's keep going.
Liz.
Two things. First of all, the American people and the people that voted for President Trump want nothing more than an audit on all of the money, the American taxpayer money, or the money that Joe Biden printed and sent to Zelensky, because you can believe two things at one time. You can believe that Vladimir Putin was wrong and shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. And you can also understand that when Joe Biden sent blank check after blank check of US dollars to Zelensky, it impacted us. It devalued the US dollar, which caused inflation to rise, which made it more difficult for us to buy gas and groceries. That's real world effects, day-to-day kitchen table effects that it had on us, even if you think that Vladimir Putin is wrong. So I think my standpoint on this is that we should audit every dollar that we sent, whether it was in military equipment, whether it was in humanitarian aid, every dollar we sent to Ukraine, because I don't want to be paying for the pensions of Ukrainian government bureaucrats when we have issues we need that money for in our country. That's the first thing. The second thing is the answer to your question that you posed to Rob before of, okay, well, what should be done to stop Vladimir Putin? Well, the answer is President Trump has an almost 100% track record in foreign policy. If there is one area that he gets less credit than he deserves, it's foreign policy. That guy is good at foreign policy. And look at a couple months ago, that Truth Social post when he said, guys, don't be panicking about the tariffs. He said he just stayed quiet because when you're in the middle of a negotiation, you can't show your hand to your base because it also shows your hand to the other side. And he just sat there for about 72 hours while a lot of his base lost their minds about the tariffs. And ultimately, all the countries that he levied these tariff threats on caved. And we are now in a situation where he is working towards a fairer playing field for economic trade deals with countries all around the world. That is what's happening before our very eyes right now. These tariffs that he is threatening on Vladimir Putin, it's the exact same playbook. You can just watch what's unfolding. Step back for a minute and watch what's unfolding. You can see it happen. So I'm not fearful that President Trump is sending more Patriot missiles to Ukraine, even though I don't think that we should be involved. I don't want more of my money sent over there. I know exactly what President Trump is doing. He is negotiating his way, and he's being tough about it because, like you mentioned, Piers, Vladimir Putin didn't just roll over on day one like Trump, and we were all hoping that he would. You have to play a little hardball, and this is the Trump negotiation strategy. My money is on President Trump. I think it'll work.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he also gave Iran a deadline to do a deal, and the day after that deadline elapsed, Israel attacked, and about 10 days later, Trump attacked with the most powerful bombs in the world. So this idea that he doesn't go through on things, I think people that live under that massive misapprehension, look at General Soleimani, look at the former head of ISIS. I mean, there are lots of people where Trump has been boxed into a place where he thinks, actually, I'm going to do something. And I think Putin's got to be very careful. If I was advising him, I'd be like, do not push Trump too far. Because if Trump thinks you're mocking him, which I think he does now, in the way that Putin's going about this war, then I think he's going to suddenly wake up and find that actually Trump's no longer his big pal. But we'll see. Look, it's a fascinating... Already, this Trump administration is one of the most fascinating I've ever covered. And we're only 6 months in. We're all nearly exhausted. There's only 3.5 years left, but it is riveting to watch. And it's great to talk to you all. Thank you all very much.
I believe that's a very, very good point right there. But I also think we must be aware that Iran and Russia are two very, very different armies, two very, very different countries, two very, very different leaders, right? We can't just go and strike with a single strike, right, in a couple of places into Russia and think that Russia is going to capitulate because of that. Like, no, I'm sorry. That's not how that would play out. It's just not. Russia is a much more sophisticated army than Iran. Like, plus, Iran has been bombarded by Israel for I don't know how many days before that, and they pretty much got rid of all their air defense. Like, that hasn't happened to Russia yet. They've been in a war for 3 years, and I think they're still capable of fending off an attack like that. Plus, what would we attack? Outside of that, like, what exactly would we do? I mean, we're not trying to destroy a nuclear enrichment facility. These are very, very different situations. I think the point remains that Trump might do something. But look, I think at this point, if the United States starts attacking Russia, I think it's going to be all-out war. And I don't think it's just going to blow over with a single strike. I really don't think that would happen. I think we would be talking about a major war, major escalation, some major consequences to that. And I think Putin knows this, right? You can call Putin whatever the hell you want to, but an idiot is not one of those things. And, you know, you could say that, oh, I'm just a Putin puppet because I called Vladimir Putin smart. Well, look, you don't become the leader of a nation like Russia or a nation of anywhere by being stupid. I'm sorry. Ruthlessness does not get you all the way to the top. Sorry, that's just not how the world works. You got to have a brain on you. And you need to know the capabilities of your adversaries. And I think Putin knows our capabilities very well. So I think that plays a major role in this. But, you know, it is a pretty good point. It definitely plays a role. But I think it's a much less significant role than when we were talking about Iran, for goodness sakes, because Iran, like I said, is very, very different. But look, all of this is very, very fascinating. I think I've rambled on for quite long enough. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Some very, very interesting aspects to everything that's going on. Like, how do you think Donald Trump is doing as president? Do you think he's the best thing since sliced bread? Or do you think he's just a fascistic scumbag? Let me know what you think down in the comments section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Sign up and become a member. I need y'all's help, y'all, for sure. But y'all do all that for me. Y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.